We are the Virginia Project. My name is David Gordon. I'm the director of the Virginia Project. We are a Republican Political Action Committee. We are here to roll back the Democrat gains that they have enacted in large part through a group that we will be discussing tonight called the New Virginia Majority. As I've learned more about this group, it's become clear that they are kind of the anti-Virginia project in terms that they're an engineering IT group on the Democrat side, using those tools to eke out all the gains they can for Democrats, and they've been extremely effective with it, as you all know. So we have with us tonight a gentleman. His name is Trevor Louden, and he has done some fascinating investigations into just how they pulled this off, including operations in China that seem to be legally dubious. We also have with us tonight a candidate for the House of Delegates, Mike Dickinson, who will give us a bit of additional information on how this plays out at the ground level where he's been dealing with it. Just to briefly mention our other activities, we are at 97 of 100 candidates for, districts in the House of Delegates that are being challenged. We are very close to 100 out of 100. This is an all-time record for the Republican Party. So we're going to give them one hell of a fight this year. We're doing it right back to them, what they've done to us. We are rebuilding some of our IT systems. That's what I've been personally heads down doing for the past week or so, and will be for another week or two, because things have grown very fast. We need to scale up, and we have many ideas that we need to implement in a short period of time. Okay, so with that all said, I introduce you to tonight's guest, Trevor Louden. And Trevor, please tell us what you have found with the New Virginia Majority and what it means for the state.
Okay, well, thanks very much for having me on, David. Thanks for helping to organise this, Mike, and the fighting you're doing on the ground. And I know you're all active. Well, see, there is this New Virginia Majority is part of a larger plan. The plan is to basically flip the South from the red column into the blue column, which will destroy the Republican Party as a nationwide entity. So that's the wider plan. This is being orchestrated by Chinese-connected groups, and I'll explain how New Virginia Majority started and their connections to other groups around the country. You have a communist party in America called Liberation Road. It's a pro-Chinese communist group. It came out of SDS in the 60s. It incorporated other Maoist groups, League of Revolutionary Struggle, Line of March, Communist Workers' Party, and it was founded as Freedom Road Socialist Organization in 1985. It split in 1998 into two Freedom Roads, and the one I'm talking about changed its name to Liberation Road in 2019. So I'll refer to them always as Liberation Road, even though they were known as Freedom Road for most of the time. So in 2005, they set up New Virginia Majority, set up by a man called John Liss from Alexandria, a long-time Freedom Road Maoist. These are pro-Chinese communists. And it was set up to basically start this process of flipping the South, doing it scientifically and methodically. There's some of the groups associated with them came out of Acorn. So there's a lot of Acorn methodology here. Very intensive voter registration, very sophisticated, well-funded, and with a very clear goal in mind of flipping districts, flipping county commissions, and ultimately flipping the state. They claimed that their first victory was when Prince William County, I believe it was, went for Obama in 2008, and they won the state for Obama, largely because of the work they did in Prince William County. Now, what they do is work the minority vote. because they call the South the new Confederacy. That's their terminology for the South. It's a stronghold of Christianity, of the Republican Party, of conservatism in the country. And they want to extinguish that by using the minority voters in those states. Their logic is simple. You have a built-in progressive white minority. You have a lot, the demographics of the states mean that you got a lot of black voters, you got a lot more Latino voters, and a lot more Asian voters in the last 10 years. South Indians, Iranians, Chinese, Vietnamese, Laos, etc., that have moved in. So they're exploiting the changes of demographics. And what their philosophy is we win by uniting the progressive whites with the people of color to form a majority. This is based off the philosophy of the old Rainbow Coalition of Jesse Jackson in the 1980s. He ran twice for president, and he united all the minorities together: the whites, the Asians with the yellow stripe of the rainbow, the Native Americans with the red stripe, the Greens with the environmental stripe at that time. Now it would probably be the Muslims. And so they got all the lavender was the gays. So you got all the minorities together to form a majority. Well, in those days, minorities were a much smaller proportion of the population, so he didn't get the presidency. But now minorities are a much larger chunk of the population. So their formula is to run progressives of color, hardcore leftists of color, and use that to unite the minorities, do massive voter registration, massive get out the vote, and that's how you flip southern states. And that's what they've done in Georgia and North Carolina and Arizona, to a degree in Texas. But Virginia was the model. Virginia was where they started to apply this. So John List and his Liberation Road comrades started heavily targeting the minority populations of Northern Virginia, especially around the DC area. It's heavy minority. The Republican Party didn't really take a lot of notice, and it just kept hammering away, signing people up. It also started to back state representatives, county commissions, these lower officers. They also formed a very tight relationship over years with the Democratic Party. All of the Justin Fairfax, Northam, the previous governor, what was his name? I can't remember now. The state Heron, all of these main officers in the Democratic Party have links to New Virginia majority, Terry McAuliffe, sorry, and they have helped to get these people elected. So when it came time to their target, they claimed to have signed up about 300,000 minority voters in the last 10 years and got them to the polls consistently. They also worked directly with Terry McAuliffe to legalize 200,000 felons. And that was against the Virginia Constitution. So McAuliffe signed 200,000 individual pardons. And New Virginia Majority gave Terry McAuliffe an award, a certificate for doing this at one of their fundraising dinners. They're quite open about what they do. They wrote an op-ed in the New York Times claiming that they flipped Virginia. You've probably seen that op-ed. So they boast about it. They flipped Virginia. And so this has been methodical. Liberation Road has brought cadre in. Most of the organization is run by Liberation Road cadre or affiliates, based on the old Maoist networks of the 60s. Then they've worked very closely, and Mike will tell you this, with the Virginia Student Power Network. Now, one of the key people in that is Charlie List, who is John List's daughter. But that is an organization which is active in virtually, it brings all the student radicals together in all of the universities around Virginia. So they use a lot of these people in the get out the vote, and they use them for demonstrations, for rallies, for phone banking to elect Democrats, etc. So this is the student wing of the operation. And so one of the reasons they've been so successful is they use very sophisticated GIS computer mapping. They can tell you every county in the state, what the demographics are, what the racial composition is, what the voting records are, income levels, etc. And so they can send Iranian volunteers into Iranian households. They can send Puerto Ricans into Puerto Rican households. They can send Vietnamese volunteers into Vietnamese households. And they play the race card as much as they possibly can. That's why most of the candidates they back are candidates of colour, because that's their target market. And these maps are generated on contract and have been for about 10 years now by a man called Steve McClure, a Liberation Road supporter, an old Maoist from the 1980s, and a graduate of the geography department of George Mason University. But for the last 10 years, this man, Steve McClure, has been generating these maps working out of the geography department of Wuhan University, China. So this is what he's doing. He's using Chinese computers. I'm assuming Chinese labor, and he is using Chinese facilities, being paid on contract through New Virginia Majority, but no doubt being paid a salary by the Chinese as well, to flip districts in Virginia. And I'm assuming, but I can't prove this, in other states as well. So this is to me, this is a Chinese Communist Party. They have people living in China. They take Chinese direction. They're linked to the Chinese, and they're using Chinese material. Now, in the last election, they expanded the model and set up similar organizations. Well, I've had some of them for a while in several other states. They've got Kentuckians for the Commonwealth in Kentucky. They've got New Florida Majority in Florida. They've got the Florida Federation, the Carolina Federation in Carolina. They've got Bloc in Wisconsin. Pennsylvania Stands Up in Pennsylvania. New Georgia Project in Georgia. The Texas Organizing Project, which used to be Texas Acorn in Texas, Lucha in Arizona. They targeted 7 key states last year, all the key states we know of, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, all the key states that were controversial in the election. They targeted every single one of them, and they claim they won every single one except for Florida for the Harris-Biden ticket. This network is the reason North Carolina has a Democratic governor. It's the reason Kentucky has a Democratic governor. It's the reason that Georgia has 2 Democratic senators and Arizona has 2 Democratic senators. It's the reason why Beto O'Rourke came within 3 points of beating Ted Cruz in the Senate race in 2018. So the model they've perfected in Virginia is being used all over the country. Now, interestingly, these groups were orchestrated by a group called Seed the Vote. Now, Seed the Vote was created by a group called the Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco, and that is a front for the Communist Party of China. The same group that started Seed the Vote to orchestrate all of these networks modeled on the Virginia model, also started a group called Asians for Black Lives, which is the group that runs Black Lives Matter. So what they did is they used the energy of the Black Lives Matter movement to fire up the young blacks and Latinos, to tell them that Trump's a racist, the Republicans are fascist, everybody hates them. And they used these people to lift the minority vote in those key 7 or 8 states. So this is where they basically are doing this completely under the nose of the GOP, completely under the nose of the Justice Department and anyone else who has any business, sorting out what they're doing. The fact that many of these groups are descended from Acorn should be a flag in itself. That group was known for its vote fraud, its corruption, its bad practices. It was caught many times. So they're using the same practices, but with a lot more sophistication. And this group is run by a pro-Chinese, this network is run by a pro-Chinese Communist Party. In Virginia, at least, they have complete, Northam, when he got in, he put the co-chair of New Virginia Majority on his transition team. Young Vietnamese lady, I've just forgotten her name, Tram Nguyen. He put her on his transition team. They worked very closely with McAuliffe. They helped to elect Justin Fairfax. They helped to elect Mark Herring. These Democrats are hand in glove with New Virginia Majority, absolutely hand in glove. And so I can think they can rightly claim credit for flipping the state. But they're not just working on Virginia, they're also working on North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, Florida, Arizona, Georgia as well, and then probably South Carolina and Alabama after that. But that's what they're doing. And, I might just leave it at that. If anybody's, that's probably a good breakdown. But if anybody, is what I said make sense to you, Mike? Is that what you've seen on the ground? I can't hear you.
Yes, without a doubt, the things that are going on at VCU with the VCU chapter of the Virginia Student Power Network. This past summer, Richmond was one of the main epicenters of riots and unrest that were going on all over the country, but we had a lot of them concentrated in Richmond. And I would say the majority of the leaders in that movement and the riots and the violence that were going on all had some connection to New Virginia Majority through this Virginia Student Power Network. All roads lead back to the Virginia Student Power Network and then New Virginia Majority.
Yeah. See, Liberation Road also has a front in Richmond now. It's called Richmond for All.
Yes,
and they're running people for Congress. They're running people for, state, not Congress so much, county commissions, the local Richmond City Council. So that's another Liberation Road front. Richmond for All. In Durham, North Carolina, they have Durham for All. In Memphis, Tennessee, they have Memphis for All. They've just set up Florida for All down in Florida, and they're trying to set up San Diego for All out in San Diego. So you've got three basic organizations in Virginia that are all run to some degree or another by Liberation Road. And plus you've got the Democratic Socialists of America who are working heavily in your state, and they work together. The Communist Party also works together with New Virginia Majority. So those three Marxist groups all work together. And Democratic Socialists of America has a Tidewater branch, a Richmond branch, a Northern Virginia branch, a Novo branch, a Montgomery County branch in Maryland. They have got all sorts of people around your area, and they bleed them out from Washington, D.C. to come into your area to help out as well. Because they've already got Washington, D.C., so they're bringing their volunteers in to help out Northern Virginia elections as well. So this is two communist networks basically working in your state, trying to steal your state right under your very noses, and possibly, I believe, acting illegally to do it. But is Mark Herring going to investigate this when they help to get him elected?
Of course not. This is all super interesting from this point of view because I had seen the evidence of what I can only call political engineering in terms of the movement of the voting data at the precinct level. We were seeing numbers that did not reflect organic change over time, but looked like somebody had taken an operations plan, and this was the output of that plan. And now I'm thrilled that we met you, because you're filling us in on the how and why the data looks like it does, because these people were engineering it through these various communist supported groups. So it really looks like we're not playing against the Virginia Democratic Party. We're playing against the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, that's effectively it. Their plan is to destroy the Republican Party at national level. And the southern states are where they plan to do it. The Sun Belt states and the southern states, by using the growing minority populations of the South and the Southwest to basically flip safe Republican seats. The Republicans are gaining ground in the Midwest, because the Democrats have gone so damn extreme that they've lost a lot of their base up there. They're gaining ground in Ohio and Indiana and Minnesota and Michigan. So they have to take the South out. And they've already flipped, Virginia. They've almost flipped North Carolina, almost flipped Georgia. They've come close, and they've almost flipped Arizona. They've come pretty darn close in Florida a couple of times. And they're making a lot of headway in Tennessee and Kentucky as well. So, this is a concerted effort, I believe, guided by a foreign power, but certainly you can point to the real Chinese connections to this network here. I've never sat in a meeting in Beijing and listened to them plan this out, but it's pretty clear they're involved in this.
I'm finding it really interesting, because if you've looked at our website, we have had a quote from Abraham Lincoln on the front page about bringing every Whig to the polls, because he was a member of the Whig Party at the time.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of a much longer quote in which he goes into the details of how he actually executes that on the ground. So it sounds like all these little groups that the Democrats are seeding all over the place are these little political execution groups where they're focused on the political fundamentals that change the score.
That's scientific about this, the Republicans, for 20 years hardly did any voter registration at all until the last, couple of years. And they thought, well, Virginia's always going to be in our column, so why put a great effort into that? And now it's almost gone. Texas was very confident two election cycles ago. They're not quite so confident now. Georgia thought it would never go blue. Well, it's on the verge of going blue. And because these people are very scientific, they have a long-term plan, and they're there to win. And they will play any way that it takes. Whereas Republicans tend to be much more, playing by the rules. We'll sort of win if we can. If we can win, that's great. But if we don't, well, that's all right. We'll just come back next time. Well, you can see in Virginia now, if we don't do something, there won't ever be a next time. If you don't take it back this time, it's going to become like California on the East Coast.
Yeah, and I don't think that's appropriate to the people of Virginia at all. I don't think Virginia likes this. They've gone way too radical. I think that they boiled the pot a little bit too fast, and the frog is jumping. So
I think that is their opportunity, that they have pushed it so darn hard that people are just in shock at what they're doing. But they're looking, A, they don't quite understand the plan, and B, and you're obviously putting a plan to counter this, which is fantastic. But, if this was left to the Republican Party, you'd be a Stalinist state in 5 years' time, and they would still be wondering why.
No, that's why we are independently taking the measures to ensure that won't happen.
Great.
We have our own solution to the communist infestation. Have you seen any other solutions that look promising and successful to you?
No, I can't say I have, to be honest. I think most around the country, the Republican Party in Florida, they virtually don't even know what new Florida majority is. You know, they were the people behind Andrew Gillum, and they lifted the Democrat vote by 40% in 2018. And it was just very lucky that Trump picked Ron DeSantis, and Ron DeSantis stuck it to Andrew Gillum, that we won this. But I'm not seeing any, and not even seeing any awareness of the problem, let alone a plan to counter it.
All right.
You know,
my straightforward plan to counter it is take all the organizational techniques that they've exploited to create wins out of losses and use those same exact techniques minus the illegal stuff and employ it against them. Do you have any better ideas than that one?
No, I don't. I just would like to see somehow some investigation into these groups, you know, at a legal level. You know, because these people have to be put out of business eventually. We can win, but we want them out of our hair, so they're not doing this again and again and again. You know,
so in Richmond, you know, a lot of the connections with Virginia Student Power Network, they're hand in hand with a lot of these bail funds and a lot of these other so-called nonprofits in Richmond. And we have complained to the local Commonwealth attorney, who's also far left Democrat. We have complained to the Attorney General's office, and nothing is done about these groups.
No, of course not. No.
They're in violation of their tax status. They're in violation. Some of them haven't even filed their taxes in years. They haven't filed their public statements in years. So, and nobody cares. We can't get any legal recourse about this.
No, you can't at state level. I'm just wondering if sometime in the future we can get something done at the federal level. But I think the more publicity we can shine on these people and hold them out, you know, show their Chinese connections, that's going to make it pretty difficult for the Democrats to be so cozy with them.
Yeah, I agree. And let's start shining that spotlight right here and now. We will definitely be pressing this issue with the RPV, and they really should address it because this seems like something that is high impact, or at least potentially a high impact. Well, no, it's beyond potential. It's flipped the state. This is high impact, critical, do or die type of stuff. So it needs to be addressed by the party, and we'll make sure.
Well, you know, look, I gave you the evidence in their own words that they're using maps generated out of China. That's got to be of concern to people, even if it's not illegal, and I suspect it is. That's got to be of deep concern to people. You know, the fact that they're affiliated with Seed the Vote, which is run out of the Chinese Progressive Association of San Francisco, which is well known for its ties. I've got proof that one of the top guys who started Seed the Vote, I've got him on tape boasting about how he goes to the Chinese consulate and runs his messaging past them, how he has a great relationship with the Chinese consulate in San Francisco. You know, so this is in their own words saying this.
Yeah, that's pretty direct control if he's running his messaging past the Chinese government. That looks really sketchy. Huh. Okay. Well, this definitely needs to be pursued further. Mike, do you have some more detail that you can share with us about what these people are doing on the ground at the universities?
Well, really, if you ask a specific question, I might be able to address it. If there's anything I've left that's unclear, or you know, any proof that needs to be provided, or anything like that. So, you know, I'm sure there are.
I did check your work. I saw that you brought all the receipts, that you have documentation of absolutely everything up and down the line. It's really impressive. You know, these are extraordinary claims, but you have extraordinary evidence to back it up. So it's time that this gets seriously addressed, because this is a major issue for us.
Like, with the exception of Mike, I'm sure most people on the call really had very little idea of what New Virginia Majority was or the impact it was having. I'm sure the RPV is aware of them, but I'm sure they don't have any real understanding of how much impact they've had. And, otherwise they would have done something to counter them. When these people are arrogant enough to put an op-ed in the New York Times claiming credit for flipping the state, and the RPV doesn't even call them out on it, or doesn't even seem to be investigating, then there's a bit of a problem there, I think. But obviously what you're doing is taking the place of the RPV to actually get stuff done that they will not do.
Well,
Do you have
we are helping. There's some certain things that only RPV can do, and this is going to have to be one of them. There's only so much that we as an independent organization can do. RPV is undergoing a transformation right now. I think everybody will be super pleased with how it turns out. People got tired of losing and are ready to do what it takes to win. And people are also pissed at hell at all the abuses of the Democrats. So there's a lot of fighting spirit that was absent in the past. And there's a long list of cleanup of stuff that should have been done in the past that wasn't. But we'll make sure that this gets on that list, because this is unignorable. This needs to be addressed. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think, you guys winning back Virginia this year in an off year would be a fantastic boost for our side coming into 2022. This is critical. This is critical what you're doing here. And it would be a real kick in the face to the left and a real boost for us. Yeah. I see somebody said this needs to get to Steve Bannon. Yeah, it does.
Sorry?
I said, somebody said in the chat that this needs to get to Steve Bannon. Yes, it does. He'd be one of the few people, I can't understand why Steve Bannon hasn't already got onto this. We've sent him stuff. And also, even Tucker Carlson should be on the case of this,
Yeah, Steve Bannon should have given us a call a long time ago, and I'm kind of wondering why he hasn't. But maybe if somebody has his number, they could tell him to give us a call, because we need to have a long catch-up talk, not just about what we've been doing in here, but about stuff that happened 7 years ago back in Canterbury. So, yeah. Okay, wow. This is some pretty mind-blowing information. So we basically have the Chinese government, looks like it's directly supporting a Democrat political action that not just any political action, but the political action that was core to changing the state from Democrat to Republican.
Yeah, I think that's a very good story, and it should be nationwide. And maybe you guys can give it the traction that it needs. I've put it out there enough, but it's a little bit frustrating as I know that I'm talking to the converted here. You know exactly what you've got to deal with. But is there any more specific questions on the group or anything that because it might spur me to consider angles that I haven't already brought out.
All right, I'm gonna throw open the floor to questions.
One thing I could say is that John Liss also heads a group called the State Power Caucus, and that is 18 groups around the country, mainly liberation road groups. And they claim they won 4 million votes for the Democrats in 2016. And they were targeting 40 million extra votes for the Democrats in this cycle. Now, they obviously didn't get 40 million. I think the COVID really hampered their operations. But this is the kind of ambition that they have. Their target was straight up 40 million votes, new votes for the Democrats, because their logic is there's 100 million Americans who don't vote in each election. Most of them minorities, the infrequent voters, and that's their target market. So they had 18 organizations. No, they had 30 organizations in 18 states, and their target was 40 million new voters, up from the 4 million they claim they got in 2016.
That
So
that
they're
also
ambitious.
dovetails with what's happening on the election integrity front. We have questions as to whether all of these new voters that are being signed up by these groups are actually voting on their own behalf, or if
Yeah.
they're being used to pad the pool of unlikely voters that are being exploited by third-party groups committing large-scale election fraud.
Well, I think I think they've used everything. Now, clearly there was electronic fraud, but the electronic, what the aim was to lift the minority votes in these certain key states, so the electronic fraud would be less noticeable. And they did that, but Trump did so much better in the minorities than they expected that it wasn't quite enough. So they panicked and had to dump in tons and tons of, false ballots at 2 o'clock in the morning, that kind of thing. But these groups are modeled on Acorn. The one in Florida, New Florida Majority, the co-director used to be the head of Acorn, Florida. Texas Organizing Project is Texas Acorn under a new name. So this is a blend of Maoism and Acorn. And so we know the record of Acorn, the corruption they were involved in, very closely tied to Obama. So I think this is all part of the Chinese network, get the voters on the ground, do the vote fraud. You're co-opting congressmen, you've got people of both parties on your payroll. So this is one aspect of the coup, but it's one we can directly tie to China and one that's been operating semi-legally under our noses in several states.
David and Trevor,
It's right
quick
there.
question.
Yes, sir.
Stan Huey here, Fredericksburg. I got interrupted during part of this with a phone call. David, are we saving the recording of this and will we be posting it on the site?
Yeah, we always do.
Okay, because I need to go back and digest some of it, and we need to be sharing this with our local working groups because this needs to get out, and we need to wake up.
Yeah, and look, as David said, we're not fighting the Democratic Party. We're fighting the Chinese Communist Party and its proxies working, they're working independently of the Democrats, just like you're working semi-independently of the Republicans. You're accounted, they work with the Democrats, but independent of the Democrats. They're not subject to the Democrat discipline, just like you're not subject to Republican Party discipline. But you're on one team, they're on the other. There's two sides battling here, but we need to understand the other side is working for Communist China. Absolutely, it's working for Communist China. Because, who's the biggest enemy in the world? Sorry.
I have a question as well. This is Katie Gorka from the Heritage Foundation. So I do just want to mention,
Katie.
Hey, so I just want to mention that Heritage is doing a lot on China. Lee Edwards in particular has been doing some great stuff lately on Chinese intellectual property theft and that kind of thing. So I'll definitely give them this content. But I wanted to raise a question with you. So one of the people that we work with in North Carolina, a woman named Sloan Rockmuth, who has an organization called Ed First NC. So she's been really at the forefront of the fight against critical race theory and the way it's been introduced into the North Carolina schools. She happened to come out with an article just last night suggesting that the Chinese were behind the push for critical race theory in North Carolina. And I thought that was I've not seen that before. So I think that might be something worth exploring as well.
So I'd love to see the direct connection. Look, critical race theory comes out of the Maoist movement here. Liberation Road was one of the main groups. This is their thing, okay? And in North Carolina, they control the education unions. Liberation Road controls the education union in North Carolina. So I'm sure they've used the education unions to work with the state authorities to get this implemented. So I'd very much like to see that. But critical race theory, which is just traditional Marxism applied to race rather than class, that is a Maoist thing. Liberation Road is right behind this. Liberation Road is the group behind Black Lives Matter. You know, they are Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi. They are all part of this. You know, Alicia Garza used to work for the Chinese Progressive Association. She was on one of their boards. The guy who started Asians for Black Lives, which really is the driver of Black Lives Matter, was the chairman of the Chinese Progressive Association and a long-time friend of Alicia Garza. She's also a very close friend of a woman called Latifah Simon, who happens to be Kamala Harris's best friend. You know, Kamala Harris is the Black Lives Matter president, effectively. So I would, you know, if you can maybe send me that information, Catherine, I could probably make some connections off it to you know, look at the background of it. That's very interesting to me. And I do know for 100% fact that Liberation Road controls the education union in North Carolina. They control Durham, North Carolina. They have, of the 6 city councillors in Durham, 5 of them were put there by Liberation Road. So they control the largest black city in North Carolina and have influence in many others as well.
Okay, anybody have any other questions for our guests? You can feel free to take yourself off mute and just speak up.
I have a question. This is Andy Bayer. Is there a way? Hi, Trevor. How is there? You know, visuals do go a long way, and you know, when if we could get, you know, a huge diagram of how the groups are interconnected and the people are interconnected, that would be monstrously educational and monstrously helpful. Has anybody ever endeavored to put a picture of a person, you know, and you know, someone at the center, or the main groups at the center, and then, you know, arrows of how they're all interconnected and intertwined?
Yeah, that wouldn't be hard to do, you know. If you know, I could draw up a rough diagram if somebody wanted to make it more professional looking and you know, useful. Yeah, but I could certainly, you know, if David or Mike emails me to remind me, I could do a diagram, and somebody with more graphic skills could make it look a lot more attractive.
We've got a lot of this information diagrammed and cataloged in a slideshow. If you can send your email to Virginia Project, they'll send it on to me, and I can send you that. Or anybody else that would like to see it. We've cataloged and documented a lot of the organizations, at least in the Richmond area, and how they all interconnect and who the key players are and how the money flows.
Yes, but you know, I think we need it on. I think we need state level and national level. I think, you know, we need to tie Black Lives Matter in. I think we need to tie in every person, and we, you know, those types of diagrams speak volumes.
Yeah, as long as you don't overcomplicate them. The money side of things is something I'm not so much aware of, because I don't know if these groups get direct money from China, because the left is such a massive funding machine through the Democracy Alliance, etc. These groups get enough American money. I don't think they need Chinese money. But, you know, if somebody can send me a little email, I'm happy to draw up a diagram of how I see it playing out. And I'm sure, Mike, you can, you know, make it a little more sophisticated at local level, you know. But this is a nationwide movement, you know. It's especially affecting the South, but it's what stole Pennsylvania, it's what stole Michigan and Wisconsin as well, you know. And it's been going on for years in other states too. But this is it went to a higher level when Trump got in office because they got a lot more urgent about this. Because the Communist Party of China knew that if they didn't take Trump down, he was going to do to them what Reagan did to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And they were not happy about that. They knew it was either Trump or them. And the best way to do that was to use their existing communist networks in your state who are working at least semi-legally to basically take to lose them in the election.
Trevor,
Anybody else?
Yeah, my name's Martha. I'm curious if you're familiar with a group called Data for Progress and whether or not they're associated.
Yes. Yeah, that's more of a Democratic Socialists of America aligned organization, but they all feed in together. Yeah, Data for Progress is a very sophisticated group. I'd have to check my file on them to give you more update, but I'm certainly well aware of them, and I'm well aware of their Democratic Socialists of America connections. But they're using their stuff all over.
Yeah, they funded 19 Democrat candidates in 2019, and they got at least 6 of them were elected.
Was that nationwide or just in Virginia?
Just in Virginia. They targeted Virginia. They were very vocal on their Twitter feed about it. They partnered with Sunrise Movement, I believe. And
Sunrise Movement is a front for both Liberation Road and Democratic Socialists of America. See, it was New Virginia Majority. They got behind Spanberger to help defeat Dave Pratt, for instance. Not that they liked Spanberger that much; they just wanted to take out a vulnerable seat. And they were also who's the other woman they took? They put in. Who's the other woman who recently won election for Congress?
Jennifer Wexton.
Yeah, Wexton. Yeah, they work for Wexton as well. So they don't necessarily only back left-wing Democrats. They will back more comparatively moderate Democrats if they can take out a Republican. But their goal is socialism in the long term. That's absolutely for sure.
Thank you.
And the way they're enacting it is essentially the mirror image of what we're doing, which is universally supporting all Democrats. So the Democrats get the majority, and then they shift the policy. They shift policy after they get power. Sam Rasool actually said the quiet part out loud, and literally put out a message that said, first we win elections and then we shift policy. So we know.
So in what context did he say that? Where did he say that?
They posted it on Twitter. I can give you the link to that, but
I'd love to see it.
It was plain as day and shameless.
Democratic Socialists of America is backing Sam Rasool, and I'm pretty sure New Virginia Majority is too, actually. But there's another left-wing candidate standing for governor, lieutenant governor too, I think. But sometimes they don't act universities. One faction will back one candidate, one will back the other. But when it's clear who's going to win, I think they all get behind. They pretty much all get behind the chosen one. But Rasool is a hardcore leftist. There's no question about that.
Can I ask a question? Trevor, how is George Soros involved in all this?
Yeah, well, see, okay. The one of the top guys behind this movement is a guy called Steve Phillips. He's from San Francisco. He used to be a member of the League of Revolutionary Struggle, a Maoist group at Stanford University. He married into the Sandler family, which was a Golden West savings and loan fortune, $2.2 billion. And he used that money first to get Obama, his good friend Obama, ahead of Hillary Clinton in the 2008 primary. He used it to elect Cory Booker to the U.S. Senate, and he used it to back Andrew Gillum and Stacey Abrams and Kamala Harris. But he's also helped to fund New Virginia Majority. But what he did, Steve Phillips went down in 2005 to Atlanta, and that's the meeting where he and George Soros and Tom Steyer started the Democracy Alliance. That's now about 200 ultra-rich billionaires and multimillionaires. You have to donate $200,000 to progressive causes just to belong to it every year. So the Democracy Alliance, George Soros is the money bags, but Steve Phillips, who has got a strong interest in Liberation Road and New Virginia Majority, tells them where to put it. So George Soros is not a strategic thinker. He's not a smart guy. I think he's just a front, basically. So he provides the money. He launders the money, but it's people like Steve Phillips who tell him where to put it. And the whole game, Steve Phillips wrote a book. It's a New York Times bestseller. It was called it's called the new, what is it? White is the New Brown. And what he says is very simple. It's rerunning the Jesse Jackson Rainbow Coalition all over again. But Steve Phillips makes the argument, Democrats forget about the middle. Don't worry about the middle voter. If you add the 28% of the electorate who are progressive whites and the 25% of the electorate who are progressives of color, that's 53%. You've already got a majority. What you have to do is put the money into the southern states, into progressive candidates of color like Stacey Abrams, like Andrew Gillum, like the guy who stood, like Ben Jealous, who stood for the governorship of Maryland, like Kamala Harris, like Barack Obama. You put your money into them and you mobilize the minorities through mass voter registration drives. So George Soros is funding this, but Steve Phillips is the ideological driver. And he is steering money into New Virginia Majority, into the Carolina Federation, into Texas Organizing Project, into Stacey Abrams' operation, etc. So Soros is there, but he hasn't got. He's not much smarter than Joe Biden, really. You know, he is using his money at the direction of smarter people than he.
Which is smart in and of itself, no doubt.
Well, yeah, it is. He's not stupid, but I think he's been a cutout for other people for a very long time. People think that if George Soros died, this would all go away. No, there's a whole bunch of people who'll come along right behind George Soros. He's just a useful bogeyman. We all blame it on George Soros. We forget about the Chinese. We forget about the Iranians. We forget about the Russians.
Well, people, I think, also forget about the elemental nature of money, and that large concentrations of money naturally corrupt the people who are attached to it. And then when those concentrations become extreme, so does the corruption, of the people that it adheres to.
Absolutely.
So,
Trevor,
George Soros could disappear from the face of the earth tomorrow. And so could everybody associated with him, and new people would step up to fill those roles.
Yeah, nothing would change.
The roles.
There might be a hiccup, there might be a little bit of confusion while they're changing roles, but nothing would change ultimately.
Trevor, what articles and other posts do you have just to try and better digest what you've been talking about here?
Look, I've sent several articles to David. I don't know if he wants to distribute it around the group. I've written several articles for Epoch Times. I've made three little movies on this. So if David sends me an email, I can make a little compilation that you can all read, or the existing stuff that David's already got. Most of it's already there. But I've written 3 major articles on this, and I've made 2 videos on it. Okay, about 3 videos on it.
Okay, I just posted the link, everybody, to the most important of those articles, the one that gives you the big picture summary, and tells you all the major points you need to know to understand the story.
Yeah.
Could you also post the videos links, David?
For this video, yes.
No, I meant the video links for the other videos that Trevor has done.
Hold that pose just a moment. Let's see here. Okay, he's got something on Rumble.
Yeah, there's Rumble, and there's another one that's worth seeing. Yeah, the one on Rumble, yeah, that should be fine. It's about 26 minutes long, I believe. That gives a pretty good rundown. But go to Epoch Times TV or go to Epoch Times Trevor Louden and put New Virginia Majority, and you'll see several pieces I've written on the subject, apart from what David has got there. And I'm happy to take questions, if you don't understand something or you want to challenge something, what I've said, or you don't think I've proved it well. I'm certainly happy to clarify what I have to say.
This is Jack Jordan.
Hi, Jack.
I'm wondering what we can do. I mean, you've highlighted a problem, but what can we do to counter what's going on? Can't we leverage what the Democrats are doing to use it against them, to get out the vote, to get more people, more conservatives to vote?
Yeah, look. See, this is what happened in Florida. They elected Andrew Gillum was elected by New Florida Majority to take Florida down, but DeSantis called Gillum out for his socialism, his radicalism, and although the Democrats lifted their vote by 40%, Ron DeSantis lifted the Republican vote by 41%. And just beat him. Well, if you can start hammering the Democrats and their ties to this Chinese-backed operation, it puts them on the defensive and it lifts the Republican vote. Because when they see you going on the defensive, that lifts their spirits. And when they see that this is China screwing with their elections, that's going to get a lot of apathetic people off their backsides and involved in this. So I think it would be very valuable to actually call them out for what they're doing, expose the Chinese links, and tell people, do you want China running your state? Are you going to allow this?
This is just the tip of the iceberg for what they're doing. They're doing a lot more than that, such as defunding the police, releasing criminals, killing the unborn.
Well, that's all a part of the disruption effort.
Yeah, it is. Well, look, how many DAs have they elected around the country? This is Soros.
Exactly.
Look, they talk about Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, right? Well, he was okay. He was elected with Soros money, but he was elected by Liberation Road and Democratic Socialists of America. He's got deep ties to Liberation Road. They have elected several DAs in Texas. They have elected Chaser Boudin in San Francisco, who is the son of a Weather Underground terrorist leader. So the plan is you elect all these DAs, your people rampage on the streets, they get arrested, and the DA lets them out again. And that destroys confidence. People move out of the cities, which means the Democrats can take even more control of the cities, and they can create little enclaves that they run, like Philadelphia is now becoming, like Richmond will become, like Durham, North Carolina will become, like Jackson, Mississippi is now. This is Maoism. You take territory, you take the countryside, you set up bases, you take the towns one by one, and you consolidate your power in the towns until you can take down the whole state. This is classic Mao Zedong thought in action on the ground in Virginia and North Carolina and Tennessee. See, right now in Tennessee with Memphis for All, they have got several. They're using the big black population of Memphis to take over Memphis, and then they're going to use that big black population to take statewide seats. Governor, lieutenant governor, senator, congressional seats, etc. They've got two of their members on the Knoxville City Council now, and there's 5 people on it. They got 2 of them. They've got several people on the Nashville City Council as well, and some on the Chattanooga City Council. Tennessee's a very red state, but Virginia was too, and so was Texas, and so was Arizona. They're planning to take every state in the South, every single one.
Well, let's stop them.
Yeah, darn right.
Okay. So, I don't want to abuse your time. You've been extremely
I'm
great.
fine. As long as people have questions, I'm fine. I'm not worried about that. But
may I? Hi, excuse me. May I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Yes, you may. Go ahead.
Yeah, Trevor, this is Patty Hellier, and I've been listening to you. I've listened to a couple of your seminars and everything. How is it that everything that you're describing tonight, and how is this not treason? And how is it that this country is not acting on these treasonous parties?
Well, why isn't Hillary Clinton in jail? Why isn't George Soros in jail? Why isn't Mitch McConnell in jail? Why isn't... Because what has happened since the 1970s, the FBI has refused to investigate communists. They were hauled over the coals by a left-wing Senator, Frank Church from Idaho, and they were basically gutted. And so they don't investigate communist radicals, this kind of thing at all. So the Republican congressmen who are serving on the Intelligence Committee don't get any information on this stuff. None at all. So they're not even aware of it because they rely on the FBI to give them all the information that's needed. And then you've got such massive corruption you've got some massive communism in the Democratic Party that they're not going to expose it because that's them. This is them. I say in my movie, there's 100 members of the House of Representatives and 25 members of the US Senate, including both Warner and Kane, who couldn't pass an FBI background check or get a security clearance to run a school bus in Loudoun County. But they are in the Senate. They're running every congressional committee in the House is run by a Marxist. That's Benny Thompson, who runs Homeland Security. That's Adam Schiff, who runs intelligence. Environment and Natural Resources, Raul Grijalva, a Communist Party supporter. He just helped to put a Marxist, Deb Haaland. The Communist Party just put a Marxist, Deb Haaland, in the Secretary of the Interior, controlling 20% of the American landmass and more than 20% of your energy resources. This is a deep penetration. And the FBI is now on the wrong side. The FBI is working for the communists, not against them.
So we had our chance in the 1950s with Joe McCarthy, and we destroyed him.
Yeah, that's right. The communists destroyed him. Who came up with the name McCarthyism? It was the Communist Party USA. And so ever since that, every Republican has been terrified of being labelled a McCarthyist. They're terrified of being called a racist. That comes out of the communist movement as well. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but it's so what we've got is a communist Democratic Party and a Republican Party that is either too ignorant or too cowardly to fight back. That's the problem.
Well, I'm encouraged with this ticket, the ticket of Youngkin and Winsome and Jason. I forget his last name anyway.
Mialis.
Yeah. Looks like we have a pretty strong, actually a very strong ticket. So let's see what happens this fall. I have been to many Republican gatherings in the last number of weeks, and I can tell you that the last election there were just a handful of people. This election there are hundreds of people at these events. So I mean, Virginians have awakened, and so that I think that's a kind of positive note here. So.
Yeah, look, I think that's absolutely right. See, I tour all over the country talking to groups. California, I've just been to Kentucky and Indiana. And there are groups starting all over the place. It's like the Tea Party starting up all over again, but with a much younger demographic. Because these people have been sitting at home reading their kids' school textbooks and horrified at what their kids are learning. They've been seeing their jobs destroyed. So the grassroots Republican Party is sick of the rhino leadership and is really, really, really getting active. I've got a friend on the RNC, and he says 70% of the RNC now they're not rhinos, they are MAGA type people, they are patriots. You are seeing the transformation of the GOP now that we've been trying to do for 10 years. It's happening now. The Mitch McConnells and the Kevin McCarthys are being marginalized, and the new breed are coming through, the Josh Hawleys and the Lauren Boberts and people like that. They are the new people coming through, and that's extremely heartening. But I want to see a lot more understanding of who we're fighting, the Communist Party of China, and I want to see people bring this up and actually make people understand this is not Republican Democrat. This is Americans versus China. This is what's playing out. And a lot of Democrats, if they understand that, they will come on board. They don't want to be ruled by China either.
Trevor, quick question here. I was very involved with the Tea Party movement, and one of the strengths of the Tea Party movement was that it was physically divorced from the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. Even though I've been a Republican since college days. There needs to be, it seems to me, a movement that's somewhat separated from the Republican Party and has an identity of its own, waking people up, more of the MAGA movement.
Yeah, look, I think that's exactly right. And I think you people are part of that. See, on the left, they have a group called Our Revolution. They've got Indivisible, Our Revolution, several of these groups. But Our Revolution has 600 chapters in 50 states. And it's run by DSA, the Communist Party, and Liberation Road. And it isn't part of the Democratic Party, but it votes in the Democrat primaries. And they vote the communists in. This is why they got AOC. This is why they got Rashida Tlaib. This is why they're getting all these radical leftists. So what we need is a nationwide America First MAGA movement that unites all the groups independently of the GOP, but backs conservative candidates in the Republican primaries. That goes into the Republican primaries. Trump's got a whole list of the scumbags that have to go. He's endorsing candidates now, but we know who the bad guys are. We know who the good guys are. So if we play our cards right in 2022, we can pretty much take over the GOP, finish off the job of taking over the GOP by running independent, by acting outside GOP discipline, bringing a lot of independents, Democrats, grassroots people, Trump people, Tea Party people to run in the GOP to vote in the GOP primaries. That's what we've got to be getting the people lined up to do that, because that's what the Democrats do. That's exactly what they're doing. America First, MAGA, because there's a heck of a lot of people who will vote for the MAGA movement that would not vote straight Republican. The Republicans think they're going to win because 80 million people voted for Trump and 20 million people wish they had. Well, there's a quarter of those people only voted Republican because Trump was on the ticket. That's the reality. And so we've got to be running MAGA-type candidates, the Ron DeSantis-type candidates, and get rid of the Mitch McConnells and the Kevin McCarthys. And we will get a lot of independents. We'll get a lot of fired-up young people. We could win pretty big. But we're not going to win if we run Nikki Haley and Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell call the shots, because there's a lot of people who wouldn't vote for any party that Mitch McConnell's part of ever again.
Yeah, I think we're defining here in Virginia this year what the new Republican winning formula is going to be. And I think it's roughly going to look like a big circle that cuts out the extremists on both ends. There may be 2-3% on the right, and I'd say probably about 15 to 17% on the left who are just totally crazy and don't have a place in any reasonable discussion. That leaves us, 80% of the
That leads exactly
from which we can be reasonable and make persuade, because there's no point in persuading trying to persuade any of the crazies, because they're committed to their crazy, so
yeah. Look, exactly. But you're
80%.
right. There's 80% of people who love America, love the Constitution, love being free, but they've been either haven't been involved or they've been misguided by people like Bernie Sanders and whatever.
Watch
A
CNN.
Republican message will not win those 80% over. A MAGA, America First, could win 80% of the people over. It really could. And so that's where you got to go, I think. The Republican Party's got to be a lot more populist, a lot more grassroots driven. It can't be seen as, got to be seen as the party of the working class, of the ordinary Americans, not of the elites. And it really is. 90% of it is working class Americans. Small business owners. It's full of patriots and grassroots. But because of open primaries in so many states, so many states have open primaries, the Rhino wing has been able to maintain control for so long. The Eric Cantor wing of the party. And,
their problem is that their constituency is gone. The people that they said, okay, so the argument for the left wing of the Republican Party and their relevance is that they claim they can pull the crossover vote, independent vote. However, over the past few years, a lot of that white suburban vote that they've been heavily courting as the difference maker, they've drunk the Kool-Aid, and they watch CNN all the time. Their brains are full of nonsense. They're not winnable. Going into for example, all these Asian communities in Virginia, that's a freaking gold mine for the Republican Party.
Look, the minorities are socially conservative. They come here for freedom. They want a good education for their kids. They're natural Republican voters. They're naturals, but the Republican Party never worried about them. So the Democrats hosed them all up.
They tend to be God-fearing people, and many of them have direct experience with socialism and or communism, and they don't want any part of it. Sergio de la Peña, who ran for governor this year, he really articulated that point of view very well, and I think candidates.
You mean AG? AG. Oh, La Peña, excuse me. I was thinking Mieres. My mistake.
Yeah, no. Sergio de la Peña is an immigrant. He immigrated like 30 years ago. He full buy-in on the American dream, and he's did quite well. He knows about communism, and he's a strident anti-communist, and he's not at all shy about it. I think candidates like him have a large place in the future of the Republican Party.
Yeah. Look, absolutely. This has got to be a Republican Party that will call out communism, will call out China. It's not going to be doing all these shady business deals with China that Mitch McConnell's been doing for decades. This has got to be, as I say, this has got to be freedom versus slavery, communism versus America, America versus China. This is the kind of way forward. In my opinion, we've got to fly the flag, not try and be, wussy. Being a wussy Republican hasn't exactly worked well, has it? Do you think if Jeb Bush, do you think Jeb Bush would have defeated Hillary Clinton? That constituency is gone. You know, Trump changed the GOP. You know, he changed it to much more grassroots. He awakened a lot of former Democrats, a lot of independents, showed them that America First policies actually work, make their lives better, you know, and that China's the enemy. You know, he woke a lot of people up, and we've got to be so grateful for that. But that's the direction we've got to carry on, not go back to business as usual, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy type tactics. You know, I can't believe they're thinking of running, you know, Nikki Haley. You know, can you imagine how she would get smashed by the Democrats? You know, just pathetic. But she thinks she's okay. You know, Mike Pence thinks he's got a political future. You know, Mike Pence couldn't run for dog catcher, but he still thinks he's out there. You know, he still thinks he's some kind of statesman or something.
Well, the new set of leaders are going to be ones who aren't ashamed of what they believe and are able to articulate it well. So we got a lot of people emerging. You know, we got real wake-up call in Virginia a couple of years ago. So this has been building in Virginia a little bit earlier than in other places. And I think 2021 will surprise a lot of people with just how much.
Yeah, well, I'm very enthusiastic with what you're doing, guys. It's great. You know, I'm going to be up and
follow up and do more of this.
Sorry?
We definitely need to follow up and do more of this. I want to get you involved and put you in touch with everybody in Virginia that can make you your information.
Well, I'm happy to. I'm actually going to be in Virginia for the Tea Party convention. I think it's June 26th or something like that, around that time. So, you know, if I need to talk to anybody, I could stay a couple of days extra and talk to folks, or, you know, I'm happy to be on calls like this with other people you might want to introduce me to. So anything I can do to help save Virginia, I'm all on board with, because I love the state and I just love to wipe the smile off the faces of Northam and, you know, Justin Fairfax and all those, you know, it will be just so.
Welcome to the Virginia Project. It's what we're here to do.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
Could I just correct something? I'm sorry, this is Kimberly, a different Kimberly.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to correct something that you might have miscommunicated about Sergio de la Peña. He's actually from Mexico, but he worked in the military in Argentina or Venezuela, so he's familiar with socialism. He's actually Mexican. He came here as a young boy. I thought he grew up in a socialist country, but he grew up in Mexico, or he was born in Mexico. But he worked as an adult in Venezuela.
Right.
I just wanted to correct that.
That just brings me to a little point before I go. Is this is what Liberation Road is also doing. They're working in Mexico. They're very close to the political party Morena that is run by AMLO, the current president. And he had a bit of a relationship with Trump, and people think that AMLO's a good guy, but AMLO is a full-on communist. He was involved in the Mexican Communist Party. He's involved in the Sao Paulo Forum, which is the alliance of communist parties that turned much of Latin America left. But this is what they're planning to do. You know, Venezuela had 30 million people and was super prosperous. A few years of Chavez and Maduro, they can't buy toilet paper. And now 20% of the population has moved out of Venezuela. 20%. Many of them still in refugee camps in Brazil. Well, Mexico's got 130 million people. After the midterm elections this year, AMLO is going to go full on Venezuela. He's going to crash the Mexican economy like you wouldn't believe. Now, where's 20% of Mexico going to go to? That's the plan. They say, the Liberation Road says that the country that will have more to do with the American Revolution than any other is Mexico. They plan to use the population of Mexico to swamp the southern states, or to swamp America. So that's the plan. So that's why we have to take back the House in 2022. Because if we don't do that, I don't know what's going to happen. But I
They're
just
ready to
that's
overrun.
the kind of planning that's going on. This is what they are playing for keeps here. They want to take America down permanently.
Well, we will do everything that we can to stop them because this is America. This is not a
Yeah.
place where communists get to do their crazy genocidal
Well,
stuff.
well, damn right. Well, it encouraged me because 5 years ago, if I'd even talked about communism on a forum like this, most people would have no idea what I was talking about. But you're all seeing it now. Everybody's seeing it now. We are living. Yeah.
We
It
got one.
explains everything. It explains
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, it does. How could the Democrats be so stupid as to do these things? Well, no, they're not stupid. They have a plan. They want to turn America into Venezuela. That's their plan. And that makes sense when you see it from that context. You know, if Chavez if Chavez was in the White House now instead of Joe Biden, there wouldn't be any noticeable change. They would still be doing the same stuff. Yeah. But
Thank you, Trevor. David, could you post this as soon as possible to the website?
Absolutely. We'll assemble all the materials we can and we'll start blasting it out.
Trevor, thank you for all that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, guys. So I'm really rooting for you. A lot of people are rooting for you. You know, you've got those off-year elections where you can point the way for all of us. So it's fantastic. Just like electing Dave Bratt basically saved us from immigration amnesty a few years ago. I think Virginia can lead the way again. So happy to be involved. But I better go. I've got to do a couple of programs now. But I hope it's been useful and happy to be involved anytime, David. So and happy to help. And thanks very much, Mike, as well, and all of you.
Super. Thank you so much. This has been incredibly interesting, and we will make it worth your time. We will get this information out there. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Godspeed.
Bye-bye. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.